On Saturday, February 1st, 2025, Mrs. Chikazor Ejezie, who was a nurse and also a lecturer in a school in Anambra State, Nigeria, left to supervise a school examination. However, before she left that morning, she had to prepare her 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy, for her long absence during the day. Normally, what she does is save them their breakfast and then prepare their lunch so that they could eat around 1 p.m. in the afternoon. She also assigned them some house chores which she expected to get done before she returned home from work. However, when she returned home around 4 p.m. that Saturday, she was surprised to find the door to the house wide open and things scattered within the house. She also found her children's slippers and sandals in the house, which suggested that they were still home. However, it turned out not to be the case after she checked the house without finding them and also called their names without getting any response. As strange as the situation was, Mrs. Chikazor was not very worried initially since it was a Saturday and they were members of the Roman Catholic Church. Normally, on Saturdays like that one, the kids usually go to the catechism class and altar boys practice in the Catholic Church they attend. However, before leaving for these classes, they usually lock all the doors and then drop the key at a special place within the compound so that when their mother returned from work, she would retrieve the key and then gain entry into the house. The compound where the family stayed was fully fenced and they had 2 neighbors who were both medical students. Since the 2 students could come back at different times of the day, the gate to the residence was usually left unlocked during the day. The compound was considered safe for the kids by their standards, so Mrs. Chikazor assumed that they had probably gone out to play. However, this assumption changed into a different kind of concern when she stepped into the kitchen only to discover that the food she had reserved for her kids to eat as lunch was still left untouched even though it was past 4 p.m. at the time. This made her wonder how good the play may have been for them to forget to eat. She called her husband, Mr. Ejezie, who was also a nurse but based in an entirely different state, to inform him about the odd situation she came home to witness. Mrs. Chikazor told him that she came home to see the door open, the house scattered, and the 3 children all nowhere to be found. According to her, she was not happy about the state she found the house and that her husband even suggested that she discipline the kids African style when she eventually found them. Little did they know that the horrific reason behind their children's presumed absence from home was something that would leave a huge vacuum in their hearts. Mrs. Chikazor asked her neighbors if they had seen her kids, and one of the medical students, identified as Chukuma, informed her that the last time he ever saw them was when he gave them the ice cream he had bought to share with them. It turns out that while Mrs. Chikazor was still at work, Chukuma had called her to seek permission to give the ice cream to her kids since she wasn't at home. Chukuma had just graduated from medical school the previous day, being Friday. As such, he had bought cake and ice cream to come and celebrate with Mrs. Chikazor and her 3 children. However, when he got home that Saturday, he discovered that only the kids were home, not their mother. In order for the ice cream not to defrost, while waiting for the mother to return, he had to call her to ask for permission to give it to the kids so that when she returned, they would now share the cake together. Mrs. Chikazor had given him the permission to do so, and he proceeded to give the ice cream to the kids. Chukuma told her that that was the last time he saw the children. He also recalled that some kids, whom her children usually go to the catechism class with, had visited the compound to look for them. However, after he had checked the house without finding them, he told the visiting children that they may have probably left for the class before them, thereby causing the kids to also leave. Since it was already getting dark and late in the evening, Mrs. Chikazor decided to visit the church to look for her missing children. However, when she got there, she saw the kids packing the chairs, which signified that the class was over. She assumed that her children were probably among those packing the chairs, but after looking around without finding any of them, her worries intensified. Mrs. Chikazor then went to another Catholic church close to them, even though her children had no reason to be there on Saturday, since they always attend their catechism class in the first parish she visited. However, when she got there, she still got the same answer as before. No one in the church premises had seen her children. Feeling deeply worried, she decided to check with other neighbors in the area, but still, no one had seen the kids. The medical students in the compound had also gone to another neighborhood to look for the children, but they still couldn't be found. Meanwhile, Mr. Ejezie had been calling for updates throughout the period the search was being carried out. After Mrs. Chikazor had exhausted the list of all possible places she could search for her children, she then called her husband once again to inform him that their kids were still missing. Mr. Ejezie told her to go and look for a place where she could make a report or an announcement about their missing children. He suggested meeting the catechist who teaches the children, the reverend father in charge of the parish, or even the police. At the time they had the call, it was already past 7 p.m. and everywhere was getting dark. Since the church was the closest place to her, Mrs. Chikazor decided to go there first and report to the priest. When she arrived at the church, she met Reverend Father Chukwubikem and while crying, began to explain the whole situation to him. The Reverend Father consoled her and then offered to assist her in the search. On their way back to the house, she met her neighbor who had gone to search for the kids in another neighborhood. The concerned neighbor told her that he still couldn't find them either. At this point, Mrs. Chikazor suggested that they go back home and check the house again. She recalled seeing her children's slippers and sandals at home, which was odd because those were what they were supposed to have worn to the catechism class. The neighbor then left ahead of them. He went back to the house and began thoroughly checking again. After going through every part of the house without any success, the neighbor finally decided to open the deep freezer in the house, and that was when he found their bodies stuffed inside the freezer. The freezer was not running since there was no power supply at the time. The horrified neighbor quickly ran out of the house and then called Mrs. Chikazor on the phone. Mrs. Chikazor, who was already heading towards the house together with the priest, saw the call and then met him. In a bid to try and make sense of what he had just seen, the neighbor asked Mrs. Chikazor if her children usually engage in any form of rough play. This question may have had the opposite effect on her, as for a moment she saw a glimmer of hope. Mrs. Chikazor quickly asked him if he had finally seen her children and also where they were. However, the Reverend Father sensed what the neighbor was trying to tell her and then quickly called him aside to hear from him first. After learning about the horrific discovery, Father Chukwubikem was said to have hurriedly run into the house to see things for himself. After a while, people began going in and out of the house, but Mrs. Chikazor was prevented from going in or even finding out what was going on. Her husband called, but she didn't have any specific information for him since she was kept in the dark about what was found inside the house. It was at this point that Mr. Ejezie asked her to give the phone to Chukwuma so that he could speak to him directly. That was when Chukwuma broke the tragic news to him that his 3 kids were found dead inside a deep freezer in their house. Earlier, while they were still searching for the missing kids, Mrs. Chikazor had asked the sales girl in the shop beside their house if she had seen her children. The girl informed her that she saw them returning home with 2 young boys and that after some minutes, she saw her younger daughter going out to buy something. However, she couldn't tell what she went out to buy as she wasn't paying close attention to it. When asked if any organs were missing from the bodies or if there were any signs that the 2 young girls were taken advantage of, Mrs. Chikazor stated that she was not allowed to check their bodies. She, however, came up with the theory that maybe the boy sent her youngest daughter to go and buy something so that they could have the chance to take advantage of the older one, and that maybe the younger daughter came back a little too soon to catch them in the act, and in order to hide their secret, the perpetrators decided to silence all three of them forever. It was also suspected that the horrific crime may have been a form of revenge for something either of the parents may have done. However, in his interview, Mr. Ejezie disclosed that there are bound to be friction as long as humans are involved, but that he wasn't involved in any active quarrels or fights with anybody. He stated that whatever trouble they had was in the past and that it had been resolved for over a year. Mr. Ejezie went on to speak about the personality of his three late children.
Even if we are quarreling with anybody, is it to revenge with children? No. Innocent children. I don't want to talk much on that, but I want to bring to notice the personality of the children they killed. They actually touched God's own pupil. Yes. My first daughter is a first-class pupil, first-class brain. If you ask of her in Edo State, Mother of Nation group of schools, they know her. If you take first from her, then you are looking for her trouble. Here at Nnewi, anytime they close from school, my house is a lesson center because of Chikaima, Ejezie Chikaima Deviana. Any mass, anybody cannot solve, my daughter will solve it. 10 years old. What they call her in her school is Cricket Star at Smart Brain. Chikaima, as a gifted child, at 4 years old, corrected me, her father, when we were still living at Edo State, Erua precisely. I went to brush my teeth at Sink Kitchen. My daughter told me, Daddy, leave here, go to toilet sink. She put sense into me. She's very, very intelligent. My second daughter, Ejezie Chiziterem Dominica, I call her double faculty. She is intelligent, double with wisdom. My first daughter, I don't know where she's getting that wisdom. Even as her father, I cannot carry her on my lap. Once I carry her, she will greet me, Daddy, good afternoon, good morning. She will jump down immediately. I noticed that she has started having that consciousness that she's a girl. My daughter, the last time I came to visit them, my wife gave me takeaway food. And there was a kind of dialogue. Am I going to use plastic spoon or iron spoon? Finally, my wife suggested I should use plastic spoon in case it gets lost. My daughter asked, my 8-year-old daughter asked, how can Daddy use plastic spoon? Immediately, I dropped that plastic spoon and collected iron spoon. If I talk of the last one is a potential evangelist. Because I was once a vocalist. At 3-4 years, my son, Ejezie Chimderem David, is a singer. If you hear him praising God, you will know that these people has actually tampered with God. I asked the state government for justice.
This was quite tragic and heartbreaking. I extend my condolences to the family of Mr. and Mrs. Ejezie, and I hope and pray that they find the fortitude to bear this loss. At the time this video was made, no suspect was arrested in connection with this horrible crime. The Anambra state government has gotten involved in the case, and hopefully the police will catch the perpetrators and also bring them to justice. Let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel for more true crime stories. Thank you for watching and stay safe.